I get to work with leaders like you, good people who have good hearts, who want themselves to build a better career, who want their teams to be more successful, and they're exhausting their resources, their time, their effort, their money, trying to recruit a new generation, trying to get them to perform a certain way, show up a certain way at work, but they're not getting the results that they want. It's the Stories Not Statistics method that will uncover answers into how you move next, because your moves might not be the exact right move for the person sitting at your table or the person across the room right now. Our workforce is more diverse than it ever has been. Today, our focus is on generations, but we can look at it from a male-female perspective, from a socioeconomic perspective, lower class, middle class, upper middle class, new upper class. What we want at work is more different, more difficult to meet the expectations than it ever has been before. But this strategy is something that I learned from a really young age, and it was almost instinct. But I learned that, as I entered the workforce, that it works, that it pays off. I've been working since I was about 11 years old. I started out babysitting. I babysat a little girl in my hometown. Her mom waited tables on Saturday mornings at a local restaurant. So she would come and pick me up, take me to her house. I'd spend the night, and the mom would get up and go to work at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So I'd be there with her little girl. We'd wake up, we'd do breakfast and lunch, and then her mom would come home and take me home. This happened for years. And then there was one Saturday where she's driving me home. It's a normal day. I get out of the car, shut the door behind me, walk up to my house, and I go to open the door, and it's locked. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought it was a little bit unusual, so I knocked on the door for somebody to let me in. Nobody came, so I just figured they had gone for a while. So I opened up a bedroom window, and I crawled through there. And it was great for a little while. I was at home by myself. I was a teenager at this time, so I had the music up. I was playing games, drawing, enjoying myself. I ended up going to bed that night. Still, nobody was home. I was cool with that. But then I got up the next morning, and nobody was home. And so I waited, and another day or so passed, and I thought, maybe I should tell somebody that nobody's here. And so I just took off walking. I walked across my community back to that house of the little girl that I babysat, and I told her mom that when you dropped me off the other day, nobody was home. I thought that my dad would come home soon, and it's been a few days. It took a couple of weeks for me to understand that my dad had taken my brother and sister, and they had left. They left me behind. And from that moment forward, I was going to be on my own. I remember saying to myself, when I realized that this was now my reality, saying to myself, Alyson, I think life has actually prepped you for this. I think that everything that has happened up to this point prepared you to be on your own, to go out there and make something of yourself, something different than what you've had up to this point. And so, giving myself this pep talk, I had to start going back in my mind and seeing, what have I learned so far? How can I use that? And the thing that kept coming up as I entered the workforce was the experience that I would have about once or twice a year, for as long as I can remember. Once or twice a year, well, let me share this with you. I grew up without a mom. She left whenever I was just a little baby. I don't have a memory of her being around. So I grew up with my dad and my older brother and my younger sister. And for my entire life, my dad has struggled with the demon of addiction to drugs and alcohol. Maybe some of you know what that life is like. And for this group, I should probably clarify. Who in here remembers Phil Van Hooser from a few years ago. Raise them high. I have met, lots of you. My father-in-law was here speaking at this conference virtually. No, he was virtual, I think, just a couple of years ago. And I've met some of you all on the elevator, out in the hallway, and you've said, oh, we love Phil. And Phil has been doing what I do for about 30 years. And so as I continue to build relationships throughout the industry and speak to more groups, I continue to meet more people who know Phil. And I tell this story about my dad leaving and my dad struggling with drugs and alcohol. I was speaking at a conference like this, and after I had finished talking, there was a man that he darted straight to the back, and he comes up to me. And he says, Alyson, the transformation that Phil has made is incredible. The fact that, he left you and now you all work together. I'm like, oh, hold on. Okay, so I married Phil's son, Joe, if you know Phil. And I started working with him almost 4 years ago. So when I talk about my dad, I want to make sure that we all understand who we're talking about here. My dad, he is a good man. I want you to hear me say that. He is a good man, but he struggles with addiction. And so for my life, once or twice a year, he would go to rehab for about 30 days. And when he went to rehab, me, my brother, my sister, sometimes we stayed together, sometimes we were split up. We would go live with different people. And sometimes we would live with people who lived like us, who didn't have anything, sometimes no food, no water, electricity. We would live there, and that was fine. It was just like my house. But then there were a couple of times where I got to stay on the country club side of town, where in the homes that I stayed in, life was very different than what I had always known at home. We had people who got up, they went to work. We had people who you didn't have to wonder if we were going to be able to have dinner tonight or have a warm place to sleep in the winter. I remember thinking as a little girl, I want that one day. I started just instinctively watching people of all different backgrounds, figuring them out, understanding what are their goals, what are their needs, why are they doing what they do? And as a little girl, I started working backwards. There were some homes that I couldn't wait to get out of. And then there were some that I wanted to stay. As long as they would have me, I wanted to stay. And so what I started doing, even as a little girl, was thinking to myself, okay, they have this need. Now what can I do about it? It might mean that I am on my best behavior if I want to stay. It might mean that I remember thinking, I can't eat too much. I need to do this and this and this to make sure that they're happy. Because ultimately, if I can serve their need, then we have this win-win outcome. And what I found is that my ability to empathize with people, to understand that need, to uncover that need, and then adapt my actions, it led to better outcomes than I could have even imagined. And as I entered the workforce, I took that same strategy and I implemented it. Right off the bat, when I came out of college, I was hired into a management position, leading people of all different generations. And I started using that same mentality of, let me first uncover their need, and then I'm going to backtrack and figure out how I need to move next. Because if not, then I'm operating off of my own understanding, off of my own experience, off of my own story, and their story may be very different than mine. And if I try to lead them in a way that I think will work or that worked for me, then I might not get the result that I want.